All right. Hello. Thank you so much for coming. We have Steve Vick on the podcast or the video if you're watching, and he is the creator and owner of Nonprofit Ally. Can you go ahead and say hi, Steve?
Hey, folks. Thanks for having me on. This is cool. This is great.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on Grant Writing and Funding. We really appreciate it. We're super excited. I do get some emails about crowdfunding. I get clients asking me about crowdfunding. I've tapped my toes in the water, and I know a lot of people out there have kind of done the same maybe, or really interested in it, or just kind of like they're hearing the word and they're not really sure what to do. So we're super excited because even though you do a lot of different things with nonprofits, one of your new things that you have out there is a crowdfunding course because you are a crowdfunding expert. So we are super excited to have you on the show today.
Oh, yeah. That's great. Yeah. Crowdfunding is something I fell into out of necessity, and I had to learn it on the fly. And it just, once you get those skills coming in, you start learning them. The thing that I like about crowdfunding is it's reusable. So once you learn the right ways to do it, what works, and you learn what doesn't work, you can build off of that every time you do it. So it just gets, it gets easier, it gets quicker, it gets more successful the more you do it. And it's one of those tools. It's a good tool to have.
Absolutely. And a lot of people, they listen to this podcast of the grants, and I'm always saying, diversify though, go out there and get other ways. Don't just depend on grants. There's other ways of funding. That's why it's grant writing and funding. And I love that this approach to crowdfunding, because it's one of those things that people can really feel involved in. And it's kind of new. So it's kind of, there's a lot of things to learn about it. And I think it's kind of the sexy thing to do right now out there in the world of funding. You could be sexy in funding, but it is, so I really appreciate that you kind of started just from out of necessity, like you said. So
yeah,
that way.
It seems like, hey, I need to raise money, and crowdfunding's the thing, right? And that's kind of what I did. It seemed like the easy way to do it. And then it became a way to, it becomes more than raising money. It's a way to generate awareness. It's a way to gather followers. It's a way to get out your mission and make new connections, right? Because we ended up, when I did my first crowdfunding campaign, I ended up, we hit the newspaper. I ended up getting a letter. We got in the newspaper. And once it was in the newspaper, that newspaper was then sent to me with a signed signature from my senator from Washington, who actually saw the local paper and actually sent it to me. And it got picked up on, because when you're crowdfunding, let me go back a bit. So when you crowdfund, crowdfunding is not just about raising money. It's more, it's a marketing campaign. You've got to get your message out there, right? And so you're creating a page full of information about who you are, what you're doing, why you need the money, and all this kind of stuff out there. And then you have to get it into the hands, or you got to get eyeballs on it, right? And there's multiple ways to do that. There's no one way to do that, but there's multiple ways to do that. And so once you find that way, even if you don't have a built-in audience, there's always a way to do that.
I love that.
So once you get in front of eyeballs, then you can hopefully share it and get it out there even more. But you're always trying to bring all those eyeballs back to one place. You have this central landing page platform that you're building it all off of, which is your crowdfunding platform, right?
Right. And I love how you say, because I think there's a lot of kind of misinformation out there to say, a lot of people think of crowdfunding, and it's kind of the same with grants, right? They think, oh, there's just heaps of money out there. People are just, I'm going to put up something once and I'm going to take my hands off of it. And it's just people are going to roll in and they're going to give me money, because they might look at GoFundMe or some other platforms and say, you know what, there's so many people out there getting money for ridiculous things, and we have a real cool organization that actually makes a difference, so we should be getting all the money. But then they do it and they realize it's a little different than they thought, and it's not exactly just money rolling in. They actually have to work it,
Right.
So can you kind of talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, you mentioned a couple of things there. One is kind of the idea that you can turn it on and it just makes money for you, and it doesn't work that way. You can't set it. It's not a George Foreman grill. You can't set it and forget it, or you can't turn it on and be like, oh, cool, and then wait and watch, right? There's a lot of upfront prep that goes into that. The other thing is you always hear of this, oh, hey, they started a Kickstarter, they got $100,000 and they started this new business, right? Yeah, true. But you don't see that they didn't just turn it on. You look at their campaign and you reverse engineer. You go to those. One way to get a good idea of how to crowdfund is go to those successful campaigns. They made $100,000 in 2 weeks. go to their campaign, see how many posts they put out there. What did they write about? Did they do it on Facebook? Did they do it through YouTube? What's their video say? What's the content on that page say, right? All of that is important. Take that information and reverse engineer it. Because crowd for nonprofits is different than crowdfunding for capital investment, right? If you're looking for someone to help you launch your product, that's one thing. But with nonprofits, there's a couple of areas where crowdfunding works best. And one is emergency funding. Say you work for an animal rescue and a dog broke its leg and you need $1,000 in a week.
Right.
Put it out there. If you have an email list and you have followers, Sassy broke her leg and she needs an immediate repair and it's going to be $1,000 to do that. And we just, nobody by Friday. It really works for like the kind of the 911 crowdfunding, right? And the other thing is just very specific projects, right? So maybe you got a grant for a classroom full of iPads, and now you need to install a certain app on there. Maybe it's an expensive app. Maybe it's $50 per app or something like that, or you need to buy the license, right? And so you need a quick $500. You can put it out there, or maybe you need all new computers for your office, and that's $12,000, right? You can. It doesn't matter the amount, but the specifics is important. What I see with crowdfunding, and here's a fact that just kind of shocked me when I read it, and this hasn't changed, right? 50% of all crowdfunding campaigns fail.
Wow.
They don't reach their goal. So they set a goal and they fail. And there's a lot of different reasons for that. But one reason is they didn't have a specific goal. They just said, we need $10,000 because we're a startup and these are startup funds. It's not very emotionally motivating for me, but I go to the other one and I see that Sassy broke her leg and I'm like, oh my God, here's $200, right? So the specifics is important. And you need a goal. You definitely, so if it's $10,000, because the big thing on a crowdfunding page, when you go into a crowdfunding page, first thing you should see at the very top of that page is a video. Video is vital. If you don't have a video, at least very good photos and several of them, slideshow photos, and not photos of your board members, but photos of you in action. I've seen it, right? Here's a group photo of all our board members, and here's another photo of our building, and it's the photos they have, right? So you want photos of the dogs you serve, or the people you serve, or the computer that caught on fire that you're trying to replace, right? There's actually
that would be interesting.
There's a good example. I had a guy on my podcast, and he was saying that his crowdfunding campaign, they had a fire inside a theater, and it burnt it destroyed the theater, right? And they needed hundreds of thousands of dollars. But there was one signature piece inside a theater, and it was a grand piano that was donated by the founder of the theater. And it was, many, many years old. And there was a picture of this burnt out piano. And that told the whole story. And they raised, that type of stuff. So you're really focusing on the storytelling and the specifics of why you're raising the money, but have a goal. So let's go to that part too, because now you've got your story and you've got your video on that crowdfunding page, and you have a really compelling story, what you do, why you do it, who you serve, what you need, why you need it, how is it going to serve the people how's this going to serve those people, et cetera, and how much it costs. So you have that great story there, and it should be emotional, right? Use some case scenarios, throw in somebody's name, and maybe you have somebody's name in there, like, okay, well, John uses our services and he's learned to read and his which has gone up. In fact, his report comes out in 4 weeks, and we're really excited to see the difference. And then you tell that story throughout the campaign, not just on the campaign page, but every time you do a social media update. Remember Johnny? Here's an update, and his teacher said this or whatever, right? The other thing that is important is the amount you're going to raise. So let's say it's $10,000, right? When you start your crowdfunding campaign, your kickoff is the most important part. You want to get to 30% of your goal as quickly as possible. There's a couple reasons for that. When you get to 30%, and this is, you can find this, just look it up, like that 30% goal, and you'll see there's lots of writing about this. There is some type of mental trigger that puts you on the road to success. So if I am coming to you kind of blindly, I come to your website and your crowdfunding platform, and I see you're trying to raise $10,000 and you have 200 raised, I might come back a little bit later and see how you're doing.
Yeah.
But if I come to your site and I see you have 4,000 raised, I'd be like, these guys are on their way. Let me help. People want to invest in something that's going to succeed. In fact, most people, here's another fun stat. I'm full of stats.
I love it.
Most people who succeed in their crowdfunding goals over succeed. So you're going to raise more money than you wanted. So let's say you ask for 10, you're going to get 11 or 12. So if you succeed, so success breeds success, right? So it's really important, because at 30%, right, as you get there, the quicker you get there, the better. Because it's just kind of, it's the energy, it's the motion.
How do you get there though? How someone said, how do I get from that 200 to that 4,000? Like, how do I get that 30%? Because that's hard, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that's part of the kickoff, right? And so let me go back to that 30%, because there's always a little, real quick, there's always a little thermometer on the corner somewhere, and people are watching that. That visual thing is very important.
Okay.
Most crowdfunding platforms have one. If they have an option to turn it off, don't, right? That's a visual. The more that thing grows, the better, right? So now how do you get there, right? You need to, it's a little bit, it's something that I refer to kind of like an onion. When you launch your campaign, and you're going to have, first of all, when you go into your campaign, don't just go in there, type in your mission, paste it in there, and turn it on and put a link to Facebook. You're going to have a fizzle, right? You're just going to, it's not going to go anywhere.
Right.
So have a plan for launch, and make all this content ahead of time. You've written your content, you've written your story, you've produced your video, you've set your goal, you have pictures of the burnt out piano or whatever it is, right, that you're going for. And you get that on there. And then when you get ready to launch, you already have a launch email set up. You have your verbiage. We're launching. This is what we're doing. Go here to find out more. And you send that out to your email list. And you also have your Facebook page or your YouTube page or your Pinterest or whatever social media you're using. It all goes out in a big blast, right? But more importantly, the most important person to reach out to is that inner circle. Previous donors, board members, friends, your volunteers, your friends, right? Reach out to them first, because they're the ones that don't need to be convinced to donate. They've donated before. They believe in your cause. And when you ask, they're probably more likely to redonate, right? Those recurring donations are good. That inner circle is going to be the most important part. If you just put it out on Facebook and think like, yeah, you know, these people who've liked my page who never really read my mission, but they like cute puppies, or they think, you know, reading's good, have liked it, you're not going to convert them likely when you have $200. You're going to convert the previous donor, the board members, friends, all these people that you know, when you make that personal pitch. So I send an email blast out to my email list, right? Because I run a nonprofit too, not just I run Nonprofit Ally, but I also run my own nonprofit. And so I have an email list, and I'll send an email out to them, but I will also go into all of my friends and families and coworkers. That's your inner circle. When you go to launch, you sit with your crowdfunding team, and everyone writes down my inner circle. Come up with 30 people. Some of you have 100 people, right? But come up with 30 people that you think you can directly ask. And you compose a personal email and send it to them from your personal email address, not your business address or your nonprofit address, and send it out to them and be like, Susan, we're raising money for this cause, and I really believe in it. I know that you've been following what we've been doing here, and it's very exciting. I appreciate your support. What we're looking at doing now is XYZ, and XYZ is going to affect this many people in this way. And your support has been instrumental in us starting and maintaining our mission. And I thank you. And please, if you can, donate here, right? So you put this pitch out there, right?
Would you be putting that out before the other one, or would you do that simultaneously?
You could. That's a good,
just to kind of get that 30%, you know, as close as you can before you even
absolutely. You can have a pre-launch, right? And most crowdfunding platforms allow you to manually enter because the crowdfunding platform is going to cost a little bit of money. They're going to take some skin off the top, right? They're going to charge you.
And you're talking about like GoFundMe, Indiegogo, Kickstarter, all these different ones, but there's specific ones with nonprofits that work a little bit better, right?
There are specific ones, exactly. Yeah, and let's talk about that in a second here. But to follow up on your question, like most crowdfunding platforms will allow you to, because you might get something mailed to you, right? And don't overlook mailing. Email. In fact, that little postcard with the check here, $30, and stamp that envelope. Give them a return envelope with a stamp on it. If you want to make sure you get good return.
Oh, I like that.
Make it easy for them. So
my grandmother used to do that for when I was young. Like, the pen pal thing. So
and how many people get mail in their mailbox these days? Right? Yeah, it's kind of nice. So make it worth it, but do that. And then you can take those checks, and as you get them, you can manually enter them into your crowdfunding campaign. So when you actually kick off, you already have $2,000 because you went and did this, whether it was by phone call, by over the coffee, by a direct email to your friends, or by letter, whatever. You get these donations in ahead of time, count them towards there. It's not lying, right? Totally legit. You're transparent, and get it on there.
Great.
Yeah, that's a good way to kick off. There's lots of ways.
So so going into that, then what are some good crowdfunding platforms that you would use? Do you always have to use one, or can you just use your website? A lot of people they're saying, I don't want to pay the conversion rates. I don't want to get anything deducted, so I'm just going to use my website. So, what's that conversation kind of looking like?
So there's different platforms for different purposes. And everyone thinks like Kickstarter is the one. In fact, some people call crowdfunding Kickstarter. They're going to get a Kickstarter campaign. I believe for arts, right? Arts and film, or
exactly,
And Kickstarter, you have to apply for. You have to tell them what you're doing, why you're doing it, and they may turn you down. So Kickstarter could work for a nonprofit if you're an arts nonprofit and you're doing some type of product. But there are better ones out there. GoFundMe is actually, it's a good one, but that is people doing their own things and stuff like that. GoFundMe had bought out CrowdRise. And actually CrowdRise was just on my podcast.
Really?
Yes, before 4 podcasts ago, I interviewed one of the managers at CrowdRise.
Oh yeah. Hey guys, Steve also has a podcast. I failed to mention that. That's Nonprofit Ally. And it's a wonderful podcast. That's actually where we met originally. So I was featured on that. So that was fantastic. And we've been able to develop this relationship. So I was like, you got to come on this one. So you guys definitely check out his podcast. It's fantastic. He does a combination of video and of audio. So anyways, that's your little buzz. Go on.
Holly's on there. So you actually, if you link to my podcast, you should link to the episode that I have you on.
Oh yeah.
That'd be really cool. So go to her show notes and link, and you can hear me interview Holly. All right. So we interviewed them. And so what they did is, anyways, I don't want to pitch CrowdRise, but CrowdRise, it's not GoFundMe. CrowdRise is the one for nonprofits, right? Fundly is a really good one too for nonprofits. Razor, CrowdRise, Razor is another one. There's about 5 of them. I have an ebook that I wrote on crowdfunding, and inside that ebook, I list these 5. They're pretty much the 5 best ones for nonprofits, right?
That's great.
And
that book is available on your website right now, right? People can go and there's different levels of crowdfunding that they can definitely access. So we'll put that in the show notes too. But there's a book and videos that you get for free. I mean, it's fantastic. I've gone through them and they're just wonderful. So everyone check that out.
nonprofitally.com/crowdfund. And you can download the book, and that gives you 5 email lessons that includes videos, and you kind of walks you through a little bit what we're talking about now, and then some, right? Because then we actually go into, because once you kick off your campaign, you have to maintain your campaign, and then you have to close your campaign, right? And then you now have, once you close your campaign, you've probably generated more interest, so you have more people following you, you have more donors, and now you've got to nurture those relationships.
Absolutely. So what would you say? Should you use crowdfunding platforms? Is websites okay? Are websites okay to use? Or do you really go ahead and say no crowdfunding because it links to your social media? There's a lot of different things that are integrated in it that are really beneficial. So what?
I think that, the tools in the platforms are beneficial. They give you the stats, they can give you emails, they can track people's Facebook. They do auto posting. There's just too many tools in there that if you tried to just do it through your website, and then every time you post it on the website, you went over, Facebook and did the same thing. The automation, the tracking, the statistics, it's worth the 5 to 10% that you might end up paying in crowdfunding fees. It just, and you're going to raise more money that way.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay, great. And would you just have a page on your website then that links to this crowdfunding that's going on?
Right. So the problem I see a lot of times too is people diversify their pages, right? Donate here, or it's also on our homepage, or they turn on the button on their Facebook page. You want to have one central place and all things go to there. You have one platform that's the crowdfunding platform. You may talk about it on YouTube or on Facebook or a blog post on your website, but always drive people to the crowdfunding page, whatever platform, the homepage there, because that's where the story is, that's where the links are, that's where the money tracking automatically happens. All that happens right there. And that's another reason you use crowdfunding platforms, because if you do it on your website, well, someone's got to build that. Someone has to maintain that. That little thermometer needs to go up automatically somehow. You might as well do a crowdfunding platform than hire a web developer to do it and maintain it. And it gets a little clunky that way.
Right. So what other things, as far as what you're talking a little bit, you have to be specific about what you actually do your crowdfunding for. But a lot of nonprofits are like, I just need general operating expenses, and those are hard to get from grants, right? So how would you recommend that? Is there any way to angle it or to pitch it that can become emotional? Or do you say, no, just stick to your projects, specific things? So how would you kind of answer that?
General operating plans are tough sell anywhere. It's a tough one, right? It's hard to get grants for. It's kind of like, well, we just need to pay for our electricity or something like that. But having said that, you could, as long as you're specific, I think you could say, the electric bill, maybe you're hiring a new staff person for a program that's expanding. Their salary is going to be part-time, $1,000 a month. You need $12,000 for this person to take on this job, which is going to make you do so, things like that. But the specifics is important. And how that connects to your mission and how that affects the people you serve. So you could do it for something probably like a salary or something like that of somebody. General information. It's hard to be specific about general or operating costs, right?
Or that emotional story like you were talking about.
Right. Yeah. You really don't pull people in there. It's the emotions that convert, right?
And what about, so, and do you kind of recommend building, should you start kind of asking for something that's maybe, $5,000-$10,000, and then maybe in 6 months or a year doing another one? I guess that's kind of two questions, but because I want to ask you about the time in between that you can do crowdfunding too. But do you kind of say start lower, or do you say, no, what do you need? Really target what you need. It doesn't matter if it's $100,000 or $10,000 if you're doing one for the first time, kind of, or does that kind of make sense to start at a lower rate,
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of variables in there, right? And it might be kind of dependent on how long the nonprofit's been around. Have they got funding in the past? Do they have a donor list? What are you fundraising for, and the amount of money you're asking? Because if you have those large donors, someone that might be donating 1,000 or 10,000, we'll do that. Here's another 10. It's like nothing, right, for them. Then why not, right? But if you're brand new, you don't even have a mailing list. You might want to just keep it simple and specific. Raise $5,000, raise $10,000, because you don't have a record. It's almost like in some ways, like grant writing.
It is.
You have to prove to a grant writer that you have done something and that you have some value and that you're going to follow through on what you've said, and you have this history, right?
Right.
People donating, even as $20, need to be convinced of that as well.
Absolutely.
So even if you're new, and when I did my first crowdfunding campaign, we reached our goal. I didn't have a 501c3 yet. I didn't even have. I wasn't even. We didn't even form yet. We were a year from forming, but I just needed the money to get started. And
wow, that's impressive.
It was a big media campaign. It kept me up at nights. I was sending out emails at 2 a.m, and it was somewhat embarrassing because people are like, "Did you really?" Well, yeah, I woke up at 1. I was worried, and I typed an email up and I sent it out to you at 2 a.m. because
that's a typical launch. Like,
oh my god. Yeah,
but it worked.
It worked, but I had the time to do it almost like every day, just producing content.
That's the thing; it was time consuming. Like,
so
it's really being strategic in how you do this.
you can avoid that. And
Yeah.
just for your own health.
That's great. So it's more about like how long you've been established, what your circle is already. I really like that to say, and that is very similar to grants. Like, okay, you know what? We have a really strong board. We have, there's a lot of things in place, so we might be able to ask for 500,000 or 200,000, whatever. You know what I mean? Because, but if you are, like you said, just right out the gate, like it's going to be a lot more difficult because it's asking people for their money. Like, people take their time to make their money, and that's important. And it's not just, it's not flippant. It's very serious when you're asking people for their money. And I know you said you didn't have a 501c3 at that point in time, and that's absolutely fine. But how you report it. But what about for those nonprofits that do have a 501c3? Is there something in crowdfunding that will automatically send the letters for tax exemption for people who give to them?
Right.
For that tax deduction.
So there's a couple ways to do that as soon as someone makes a donation, you are developing a relationship, and they need an immediate response. So there's most crowdfunding platforms have built in, I know Fundly does, I'm pretty sure CrowdRise does, built in autoresponders. Thank you for this donation to our nonprofit. You're going to really help us do X, Y, and Z. Your donation of insert amount here, and most of them will automate the amount, is tax deductible because we have a 501c3, we're a charitable nonprofit. Thank you so much. And that can serve as a receipt. And I would follow up again with a letter if you have their address, or another email directly from your director or your president, right?
Oh, that's nice.
Again, a couple of days later, thanking them again, and making sure that it's much appreciated, and asking them to, because now this is where the crowdfunding part comes in, asking them to share their donation or to share the fact that they did that, and put those links in there.
I like that.
A way for them to click on a button that shares this to their Facebook page that says, hey, I'm now the proud sponsor or proud donor of this organization, and let them do that themselves, because that's what's going to generate awareness, bring more followers, and eventually lead them to your landing page, your crowdfunding campaign page, and hopefully convert them into a donor.
Right. So, that's great. And there's other things you can do to say like, hey, we have this event going on, come attend it. Like really develop, like you said, this is a relationship building strategy. Exactly. So that's a great thing, just to get new people involved, and they might be across the country, but still, you know what I mean? You can kind of locally develop those relationships. Yeah.
Well, it's part of what I was talking about, the onion, right? You start with your inner core, and then you go out to your mailing list, and then you're trying to bring more people in. So you keep expanding out and out and out. And you do that through your followers. Ask them one way, through your followers, and ask them to share or post or comment on something. All those things generate more eyeballs to what you're doing. Right.
Okay. So then back to my second part of the question is, how often can you do this? Is it as often as you have need, or are you going to burn out your donors? Like, how do you, what's kind of the sweet spot, or how do you navigate this process?
Yeah. You're out your donors, right? If you are asking them for money all the time, over and over and over, then they're going to stop listening. They're going to turn you off, right? What you can do instead is maintain that relationship. Keep them, involved in what you're doing, keep them involved in your mission, keep them involved in your story. And then how many times? Twice a year, maybe, or when needed, an emergency happens. Like, no one's going to be mad at you when this happened at the shelter I worked at. I was the ED at an animal shelter, and we had this new dog in there, and he ran over the desk. And when he ran over the desk, he knocked this water cup everywhere.
Oh, on the
we're like, oh, we're picking up all this water. And then we're like, oh, and then we, puppies will be puppies. We're cleaning up the mess and stuff like that. And then me and my coworker were both like, what's burning? Like, what's up? Is something on fire? We shorted out the computers.
Yeah.
And so
it was cute little puppy.
Cute little puppy. So, that's an emergency. We can't work without a computer. Right. One, we have to restore the hard drive, and then we get a new computer. So we did you remember, these used to be really popular, the old shaming posters. You used to put on a dog, and it'd be like, my parents' slipper. Put a picture with a slipper, and the dog would have like, I love slippers, but my mom is mad, or that, like those shaming things. So we did that. So we took a computer and we set the dog next to it, and we put a little sign on the dog, and like, I forget put on there, but we renamed it. We renamed the dog because he didn't have a name yet. What did we call him?
Computer crash.
No, in a minute. But we gave him a new name. Is now, what was his new name? And it was like circuit or short, get what it was.
Oh, how funny.
It'll come to me. But anyways, so we did that. Just we're like, we need money, and we just put it out there. No one was mad at us or didn't donate, because maybe even if we had just done our fundraiser, this happened a month later. Who can blame a puppy? We need money to get a new computer.
Such a cute way to showcase it too. I mean, that's a great example of saying
Surge. We named him Surge.
Oh, Surge. Oh, that's cute. But like how to pull in maybe something that's a little trendy and then like make it cute or make it emotional. But yeah, and then just show it like, oh my gosh, my computer. But that's a great way to kind of link it back to what you're talking about before of how do you do this? Be creative, right? Have fun with it. But things happen. So were you able to raise your money through that then? To get your computer?
The only unfortunate thing about the whole episode was because he had shorted the surge protector, which kind of disrupted the whole system. Is that when he got adopted, they changed his name.
Aww.
Like Surge.
Well, I imagine it was hard to crowdfund when you're struggling over computers too.
Yeah, thank God for laptops, right?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. All right. So it kind of depends on the timeliness of it, of what's going on, but you don't want to burn them out. You don't want to keep asking over and over again, but you do want to kind of use all the people that collect all the people that are curated through this process. You want to be able to really keep them involved, let them know what's happening. And they probably will know about your upcoming crowdfunding, kind of activities because they're just they're in your circle. Right.
Right. Yeah. So now they're on your list and you're going to be, hey, we have an event coming up. We have a new program person here, whatever you're doing to keep people involved in your program, they become part of the story and you're sharing that all the time with them.
And just to make sure in between crowdfunding, you're also giving that value and you're sharing more of what you're actually doing and you're not just sending out emails when you need money. Because I've seen that happen a lot with nonprofits too. The only time they really even do a marketing campaign is when they're asking for money. And that's not developing relationships. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah. That's a whole topic too, is like developing the relationship, storytelling, like how a lot of EDs are like, oh, I got to write that darn newsletter again. It's like pulling teeth and you got to do it. But when you hit on a story, like I was saying, you follow one of your clients, one of your consumers or whoever's in your program, and you just give 1 minute little updates, either through email or on Facebook or, here's we were talking about the kid learning to read. He's going to read the first page of his new book to you. And then you just get your iPhone up and do that. And people are going to be like, God, look, that's the guy they were talking about in the fundraising page. That's Johnny or whatever.
I love that.
Right? So now you have this emotional connection because he's learned how to read because you helped buy that book that's in his hand or whatever.
Right?
So what about connection's always there?
Oh, I love that. So what about the video? Just kind of going back to that video and how important it is. I see nonprofits are buying into that concept, but then all of a sudden I look at their crowdfunding and it's a 4 to 5 minute video. That's really long in social media terms. And it's very stale. But they've kind of tried to set it up professionally. So it's that old, like, someone sitting down looking the other direction and talking, and you're looking at them for like 2 minutes, and it's not engaging, right? And I think more people are kind of, correct me if I'm wrong, but I know in kind of the other aspects of social media, people are going this way. I'm not sure in crowdfunding, but it's more about that, be authentic. If you need to use your iPhone, just use your iPhone. It doesn't have to be fancy. You're actually looking for fun. So, you don't really necessarily need a professional shooted video, you know what I mean, for your crowdfunding platform.
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of the beauty of what the iPhone or mobile devices in general, smartphones have done for us is it's we're just used to seeing people shoot video on iPhone. So that quality is totally acceptable now. So if that's what you have, use it. So there's a couple things though. The story is the most important part. Okay. Audio is the next, and I only say this because I have a degree. My formal training is multimedia development. So
nice.
I got into producing stuff. Been doing lots of marketing and campaigning for stuff. But the story is going to be the most important. You really got to have that emotional stuff. Audio is going to be your next important thing. If the audio is off or sounds like they're in a tin can or scratchy, video is third on that list. If you have a poor lighting or a shaking hand, stuff like that, a good story and good audio can overcome that.
Okay. All right. So is there any kind of limit then in time, would you say? Because I do think that's a factor. but maybe not. Would you kind of recommend this kind of a ballpark amount of time? Kind of don't go over this, or make sure you just don't have it for 6 seconds, you know what I mean? Or whatnot.
Yeah, you're right. Like a 4 or 5 minute video, you're getting kind of long at this point. Unless you have a really engaging story that has a multiple plot line and several characters, and that takes time to produce. But think of that there's a lot of ways to do it. But one way is to think of the video kind of like your elevator pitch. And you have 1 or 2 minutes to tell this story, and you have audio, and you have images, you have all these ways of doing it, camera angles, photos from the past, right? Here's a kid learning to walk who might has muscular dystrophy or something like that, and here's pictures of them from the past. Throw those in there, right? Voiceover. There's ways to do this where you don't have to say it, and you can just show it. So there is when the video part plays into the storytelling.
Oh, I love that. And it's stuff that you can just kind of throw in, like the pictures. You should have some pictures from the past, like you're saying. So even if you have that person seated that's telling the story, you could have stuff coming on the screen, overlay, to kind of, so it's not simulating to look at then. Would you recommend a certain kind of software then for people to use?
Well, I have some professional level software I use, but really just whatever's on your Windows or Apple machine.
iMovie, whatever, they can do
works.
it. Yep.
Throw it in there. It does help with your software if you have multiple audios. So some of them don't allow for that. But if you can at least have like music background, and you can put a voiceover on top of that, and then maybe have some audio directly that comes from the videos. And if you can combine those and lay them over each other, that really helps.
That's great. That's a great tip.
Because when someone's talking about when they were homeless, right? And they had to come to the homeless shelter and they taught them to read or whatever, right? I'm kind of making up these stories. While they're saying that, you can have those pictures of the past, or you can have even if you don't have pictures of the past, you can have a picture of the homeless shelter.
Right.
At least that, right? At least help people visualize.
Yeah. Or if you needed to, you could even grab stock photos. Like this doesn't have to necessarily, right? It has to just communicate that story and have a visual appeal.
Pictures of someone's hands, working on something, someone grabbing a cup of soup, all that kind of stuff. Storytelling all the time.
So you could really do that. And okay, so I know we're kind of going over my normal time for this podcast, but I think this has been so engaging. So I kind of want to just a few more minutes, guys. But I want to go ahead and ask the question too is, how long should your actual campaign be for? And I know you said, well, sometimes, it's that emergency. So this week we need this money because otherwise, Sassy's going to, get go to the pound. I don't know, whatever it is, but you know what I mean? Or they need this is when it's happening. This is our surgery date. So we need the money here. But typically when you're formulating your crowdfunding, if it's not an emergency crowdfunder, how long is the duration of the crowdfunder?
Yeah, that's this is a great question, because one of the reasons campaigns fail is because they don't do this well. They either do it too short. Like if you need $1,000 for a broken leg for a dog, you might get that in a week or two. If you need $12,000 for a network, so 3 computers and a networking system and a new printer involved in that, your campaign 6 to 9 weeks, right? Wow, 3 months tops, right? So just plan for that. It's going to be a little while. And the thing with campaigns, you might be able to get it in a month, right? Yeah. It takes more work because now you're condensing the amount of time. And so you're condensing your outreach. Because you remember, you have a campaign that you're doing this awareness. You're generating content. You're putting social media posts up. You're telling stories. You're sending out emails. You're updating blog posts. You're watching your thermometer rise each time. When you reach benchmarks, you're telling people 30% raise, 50% raise. Thank you for this donation to so-and-so. You're constantly doing this. And what's going to happen when you kick off? That kickoff's really important. The crowdfunding campaign is a reverse bell curve. And so you kick off really high up. Boom, boom. You get a lot of donations coming in. And then after that first week, it starts to dip down. And then it becomes this big lull. And that's when people are like, oh, that's when it gets kind of nerve-wracking and stuff like that. But you're going to see towards the end, it comes right back up. So people donate the most. Most of your donations are going to come at the beginning and the end. But during that bottom part, you got to keep your momentum going. You got to keep posting videos and posting stories and letting people know how you're doing and when you reach a benchmark and all that kind of stuff. So within that time frame, you have a launch, which might be your first week. And I recommend people to have a calendar. So 6-week campaign. And we've pre-produced 30 Facebook posts. And those might be benchmarks. It might be updates on Johnny's story. It might be announcements of new perk awards, right? Don't forget, we give a cup for every person who raises gives $50 or whatever. And you're going to have organic stuff come in all the time that you're going to be like, hey, that's really cool. So-and-so just gave us a testimonial. Let's put the testimonial on there, right? We just got someone famous in the neighborhood just gave us money, right? Or someone just liked us that's famous, whatever. So you have all this going on at the same time. So you have that calendar out, but I really recommend have your content and a day-by-day plan for that first 5 to 7 days. Content, email gets sent at this time. Launch parties, live launch parties, Facebook Live, your launch party, right? So there's so many options to do through that, and keep people posted on that progress. And then have a second wave, right? And then you have another wave, and you have these things kind of planned. And then that last week, because scarcity is a good seller. Folks, we are 70% of the way. We have 1 week left. All we need is $2,000 more, and so-and-so is everyone's going to have a new book, iPad, or whatever you're going to get. This is a great thing. And then maybe you film Johnny saying, thank you so much for donating so far. And I can't wait to get these new books because I know, look at my grade point average going up, and I'm so excited, and whatever, right?
I
But
love that
you're telling
story.
that story and just bring those people in there, and you're gonna have a push at the end, right?
That's great.
Go back to the donors who already donated and ask them, thank you so much. It's really, how about $20 more would just really make a difference because we are so close to our goal, and you've been instrumental in bringing us there.
That's a great tip. Yeah, to go back to the people who are already even say, hey, we love it, or this will boost you up to the next incentive, or we're going to go ahead and give it to you anyway.
Exactly. Yeah, you know what? You've donated once as a second-time donor. Even $5, and we'll give you a free this.
Right. I love that. Right. And that's the other thing too, is I think crowdfunding is great because it's incentivized. You are giving out incentives for each kind of level, and that's the typical way of doing it anyways. And it's great because you're giving something back in return. So those people who might say, I don't feel comfortable asking for money. I don't feel comfortable for blasting social media. And or when they hit that lull, they're just like, man, I just feel like I'm selling. I'm a swarming salesperson. You know what I mean? Yeah. But then you can turn around and say, no, you're giving out these incentives. You're actually giving something in return. So I love that kind of how it's coupled together. So you don't feel like that. You don't feel so slimy. You actually feel like, okay, I can do this. I can ask for money because I know that it's really helping and I'm giving something in return.
It's a tough thing to overcome, is the idea that you're asking money. People don't like asking for, feel like, so storytelling helps.
Yeah,
connect
absolutely.
the donor to the story, and that can help you with conversions.
Well, man, I have like a million more questions, and I'm sure other people do too. So I just want to say, we're going to definitely follow up after this podcast, but people can also, like I had mentioned before, you do have your crowdfunding. You have all these free resources online right now on nonprofitally.com/crowdfunding, right? Is that it?
Crowdfunding will get you there too. Crowdfunding works too, but crowdfunding.
Okay, awesome. Yep. Perfect. And you have a new course out. So if people want to even get more information, they can go ahead and they can purchase your course. It's fantastic. You do an amazing job with video. Obviously, I didn't know your background, but now I do, so now I know why. And so people can really it's a great deal. It's on sale right now, you said, and it'll be going up in probably in the next couple of days after this podcast gets released, which will be in mid-Jan. So it's going up to $97. So, and that's a great bargain for everything that you have, all the content, all the resources. So I just want to thank you again for being on the show. I know a lot of people have learned so much, myself included, and we would love to have you on again. Just, maybe I'll get some more questions from people who are listening, and we can go ahead and have you on again in the future and see more. You can answer those questions then. That would be great.
Yeah, that'd be really cool. So I can tell you about the course,
yes,
because
please.
You can get the crowdfunding book for free.
Yep.
And with that comes 5 free lessons, and there's videos, and there's it kind of walks you through the basics of trying to be successful. Because remember, 50% of crowdfunding campaigns fail. Mm-hmm. And so you really have to do things right. And there's lots of ways to do it right, but there's a lot of ways to do it wrong. And so the course teaches that. But that course also includes, like, if you don't know how to write a good sales email, that email that's going to go out, we have templates for that.
Oh, so I love that. So you have templates. Fantastic.
Got that for you. Got an idea of how to, there's examples of the video. Like, what do you put in your video? I have a whole section on making a good video. I give examples of videos. There's even a 1-minute video in there that was produced to for a nonprofit to raise money. It's a 1-minute video and it tells the whole story. So
Okay.
that's in there. Closing your campaign, social media campaigns, all that is in there. So I try to make crowdfunding as easy as possible, because I don't want other people to stay up till 2 a.m. stressing about writing emails and finding donors.
I love that. And I love that you're doing it from a nonprofit. You have a nonprofit, you're coming from that approach. Like you had said before, there's a lot out there. And I've even looked before in the past at crowdfunding kind of courses that were out there before I knew about yours. And a lot of what I saw was on products. It was on capital. It wasn't for nonprofits. And when I was watching some videos or whatnot, it just didn't really translate. And I was like, man, this just doesn't translate. It's a totally different demographic. It's a different, it's a different people that they're going after. So yours is focusing on nonprofits, which is, it's very specific. So I love that you have a different approach, and you can actually market in a good way where you can develop those relationships, because nonprofits are all about, it's about your relationships. It's about your circle. So I really appreciate that you have that available. So can you just go ahead and tell us again where people can reach you at, maybe on social and your email and everything? That'd be great.
Yeah, that's great. So nonprofitally.com is the site. There's all sorts of resources on there for branding, for crowdfunding, or if you're new to nonprofits and you want to start your nonprofit, there's a whole section on start profit there. Page goes directly to me. So, or if you just want to do that's steve@nonprofitally.com. And of course, we have a Facebook page and a YouTube page, all those nonprofitally.com, and you can go there, and the podcast is there too, so you can subscribe to the podcast.
Excellent. And you also have a course coming up on how to form a nonprofit 501c3. Is that correct?
Right. That's been in the works for a while, and our launch date is coming up, but I partnered with a nonprofit lawyer, and we've created a course. It's kind of like a DIY kiosk with a lawyer as your personal assistant.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, that's great. So I know I get a lot of people asking me, so I will be sending them to you because I honestly don't, doing nonprofits, it's okay, but there's a special niche. Absolutely. And I like that you have a DIY, because there's a lot of templates that you can just give to people, and you can say, here, this is how you do it. You know what I mean? And they can really do it for themselves. They don't have to invest a ton of money into all of that. And that you have a lawyer there too. That's great. That's really
the lawyer. So when people go to submit their stuff to the state or to the IRS, you submit it to him first. He checks it off and just gives you the okay on it, or lets you know what you missed, sends it back to you, and you're good. And then you go through, right?
Great.
It's good. I'm excited. I'm really excited about it.
Well, maybe we can have you back on to talk about that once that's launched, because I think a lot of people are looking into, what do I do? I don't really know what to do. And that would be a great thing to talk about, bylaws and articles and board structure and all that kind of fun stuff. Okay. So that would be wonderful. So thank you again. Once again, you guys can reach out to Nonprofit Ally. It's all about crowdfunding. He's got all other things for nonprofits. He's got a great podcast. Thank you so much, Steve, for being on today, and I hope to have you back.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much.
All right, take care.